These are the most shocking, interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. 1916. Designer Charles Le Platinier, mentor to Le Corbusier, built this Swiss helmet prototype with a drop-down chainmail visor. It promised less glare and fragment protection, but weight and poor visibility ended adoption. 1987. Grace Kirby, the female Cenobite in Clive Barker's Hellraiser, rests between takes as artists check her prosthetic makeup. Image Animation spent hours layering latex appliances and precise pin fittings, crafting one of cinema's most memorable creature designs. 1970, Maryland. Diane Arbus captured a carnival sword swallower at full stillness, pure nerve and precision. Shot on her square format Rolleiflex, the image becomes a stark, almost ceremonial tableau, echoing Arbus's focus on American sideshow performers. 1959, England. Cam from the Bertram Mills Circus calmly sat on a learner plate Land Rover during road training. Handlers ran traffic rehearsals before the troops' Christmas season, turning a country lane into an unforgettable drill. 1881. A Victorian family Bible with beveled leather boards, brass clasp and lavish gilt, Last Supper vignette, radiant eye motif, and architectural paneling. Many presentation Bibles like this doubled as home archives, holding photo slots and handwritten records of births and marriages. See 1930s. The Psychograph, a motor-driven phrenology analyzer, mapped head contours with dozens of probes and automatically rated 32 faculties on a printed card. Built from 1,054 parts and sold to shops and theaters as a paid novelty, it's a polished relic of a now disproven craze. 1936, King Edward abdicates. A Baltimore News Post extra announcing Edward VIII's choice to leave the throne to marry Wallis Simpson. Britain's first voluntary abdication reshaped the line of succession, elevating George VI and, later, Elizabeth II. See early 1800s. Asylum rotational therapy devices spun patients in chairs or hammocks by hand crank to rebalance the nerves. Doctors hoped the whirl would quiet agitation, but it mostly caused extreme dizziness, and the method faded out. 1915, France. Munitionettes, on a hastily built assembly line pack, pre-cut shrapnel balls into artillery cases to supply the front. These homefront plants ran day and night, turning out thousands per shift while workers endured fumes and constant vibration. Early 1900s State Hospital corridor, plaster peeling from vaulted ceilings, a steel wheelchair left where staff once rushed between wards. Many such complexes across the U.S. were shuttered during 1960s, 70s deinstitutionalization, leaving entire campuses and tunnels to the elements. 1945, Berlin. A Red Army soldier carries the head of a toppled Hitler statue after the city's capture. Broken symbols of the regime quickly became souvenirs and photo props amid the ruins. Late 1940s, Ilse Koch sits in custody after the war, one of the most publicized defendants linked to the Buchenwald camp. Tried by U.S. and West German courts for prisoner abuse and corruption, she ultimately received a life sentence in 1951. Late 1950s, thalidomide was sold as a sedative and morning sickness remedy in 40-plus countries with minimal testing. Its link to serious birth outcomes sparked a global recall and drove modern drug approval safeguards. Early 1930s USSR. The Kalinin K-7 was a radical giant with a thick habitable wing, twin tail booms, and 7 engines, part transport, part flying fortress concept. Tested near Kharkiv in 1933, the program ended after structural issues and trials, leaving this prototype as one of aviation's boldest detours. May 1945. Major Dick Winters and Easy Company relax on the terrace of Kehlstein House, the Bavarian mountain retreat above Berchtesgaden, after the area fell. With the Alps behind them, the paratroopers briefly paused at the former power seat, before pushing on through southern Germany. March 1938. A Reich referendum ballot on Austria's annexation shows an outsized jaw circle dwarfing a tiny 9. The design echoed the climate of pressure. The regime later reported over 99% approval. Early 1970s, a young Morgan Freeman on a studio set during his The Electric Company era, long before film stardom. He honed comic timing and that unmistakable voice in quick-fire sketches like Easy Reader, groundwork for an Oscar-winning career. 1942, Continuation War. A Finnish soldier shares a rare calm with a captured Soviet conscript, one of them clutching a sousaphone. From the S.A. Kuva archive, it's a quick glimpse of how band instruments outlasted the front and briefly lifted morale. This shell is Stupendimes, a South American turtle from 8 to 13 million years ago with a car-sized shell up to about 10 ft 3 L. It swam the Amazon Orinoco wetlands alongside giant crocodile cousins. Males had horn-like bumps on the shell for contests. Tucked inside an old Shakespeare volume, an original 1864 U.S. ballot ticket for Lincoln and Johnson used as a casual bookmark. Before standardized secret ballots, parties printed full slates. Voters just folded the ticket and dropped it in the box. 1972, Tehran. A hillside becomes a patchwork gallery as merchants sun-dry freshly washed hand-woven carpets. Sun and mountain air set the wool's natural oils and brighten vegetable dyes. An everyday ritual that reads like land art. June 1944, Normandy. Allied troops step off an LCI carrying folding BSA bicycles, light hinge-frame bikes for rapid movement once inland. Couriers and scouts use them to slip past beach traffic and link units faster than marching. 1945, U.S. servicewomen pose with captured German medals, part trophy, part playful jab after VE Day. Souvenir snapshots like this were common as units cataloged gear and celebrated the war's end. 1943, U.S. Series E War Savings Bond, $25 face value bought for $18.75, signed by Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau, Jr. Millions like it funded the home front effort. It matured to $25 in 10 years and kept accruing interest for decades. 1950s-60s, researchers used sealed smog chambers, where volunteers briefly breathed controlled levels of ozone and exhaust while their reactions were recorded. Data from studies like this helped set exposure limits and informed the first U.S. Clean Air Act standards. 1961, Netherlands. Beachgoers use foldable mirrored reflectors to intensify sunlight on the face and chest for a faster tan. The lightweight beauty gadget faded as dermatologists warned about UV risks. See 1917, London. Women window cleaners balance on tall ladders with pails and squeegees as the city's workforce reshapes. With many men away in World War I, cleaning firms recruited women by the thousands. Scenes like this quickly became the new normal. October 1948, Robert Capa photographed Warsaw, one church rising over acres of rubble where dense streets had stood. After W2 and the 1944 uprising, much of the city was destroyed. Within a decade, crews rebuilt the old town from historic plans and paintings. 1960s, East Berlin, Alexanderplatz. A textile worker steams a coat on an inflatable pressing mannequin that grips the fabric and sets seams with heat. Sidewalk crowds watch these factory floor demos, a showcase of the GDR's push for modern mass production. 1975, law student Ted Bundy, later exposed as a notorious criminal, plays the helpful guest at a birthday cleanup. At the time, he volunteered at a crisis hotline. Friends saw charm, not the double life soon revealed. 1950s, Albert Camus, future Nobel laureate, breaks into a quick step during a rehearsal break, caught by life's camera. The poet of absurdism also loved simple joys, soccer matches, swing rhythms, and a little backstage dancing. See 1890. Welsh strongwoman Miriam Kate Williams, billed as Vulcana, the muscular beauty, poses in her stage wrap at the peak of her music hall fame. Touring Europe with partner Atlas, she bent iron and lifted partners overhead, turning women's strength into a headline act. C. 1990, Nintendo Game Boy Store demo kiosk running Tetris, the pack-in hit that helped sell millions of handhelds. Shoppers played on the unit docked below while the kiosk mirrored the action to the big green display. C. 1899. A village school class in the Austro-Hungarian Empire poses for a rare studio portrait. Folded arms help children hold still for the long exposure. Images like this later gain notoriety for who might be in them, but they're also time capsules of crowded classrooms and strict routines. 1960, Galesburg, Michigan. Brad Curry's bottle-raised fawn trails him to the sidewalk as his school bus pulls up. Locals nicknamed the tame deer Classmate, since it waited at the path every morning and met him again at drop-off. 1980s malls. Indoor smoking was routine. Benches with ashtrays, food courts under a light haze. Widespread smoke-free rules didn't arrive until the 1990s-2000s, when states and mall chains phased it out. Nurabad Bridge, Morena, India. An 1829 engraving beside a 2010 photograph of the same arched span. Stone piers with Mughal-style Chhatri pavilions and tapering corner towers have held their silhouette through nearly 2 centuries of monsoons. 1902, Chicago. Telegraph messengers surged through the loop during the Messenger Boys' strike, waving caps and handbills. They pressed firms like Western Union for better pay and shorter hours, a small spark in the wider U.S. child labor reform push. 1960, Algiers. In the Kasbah, a street barber keeps working while a French soldier stands watch at the doorway. Daily routines unfolded under tight patrols during the Algerian War, a conflict that reshaped France-Algeria relations. 1940 novelty cigarette case with 2 buttons and a built-in counter, one press for your own smoke, another to log giveaways. A clever pocket gadget from the rationing era that turned sharing into numbers. October 23, 1917, New York. Japanese actor, writer, and suffrage leader Kamako Kimura marches with the Women's Suffrage Party, kimono and U.S. flag in hand. After officials shut down her lectures in Tokyo, she came to America to rally support for women's voting rights worldwide. Early 1980s. IMSI advertised a 10-megabyte computer system, 64K RAM, 5.25-inch floppies, CP/M, and a dot matrix printer for $5,195. Roughly the cost of a new compact car then, it stored less data than a single modern smartphone photo album. 1940s, Pacific Theater. A Japanese soldier steps out with hands raised to U.S. Marines amid a shattered strongpoint. Because surrender was discouraged by doctrine and fear, Allied units used translators and leaflets to coax safe give-ups when possible. 1941, Ukraine. A local woman tips a pail so a captured Red Army conscript can drink by the roadside. Taken in the opening months of the German-Soviet War, it's a rare glimpse of simple care amid a moving front. 1970s-80s brochure for New York's World Trade Center, selling the observation deck as the closest some of us will ever get to heaven. It packs maps, tower stats, and visitor tips for the South Tower's skyline view that drew millions. Cleopatra, c. 30 BC, lived or reigned 2,500 years after the Great Pyramid, c. 2560 BC, but only wrote us in 690 years before Pizza Hut opened, 1958. She's roughly 5 centuries closer to the pizza shop than to the pyramid. Time plays tricks. August 1918, the U.S. Marine Corps swore in its first women, headlines called them Marinettes led by Opha May Johnson, to handle clerical and code work as men shipped overseas. Within weeks, hundreds enlisted, proving women could wear the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor decades before full integration. June 22, 1941, morning. German panzer columns pass a Grenze 1 kilometer sign en route to the Soviet frontier. Within hours, Operation Barbarossa opened the Eastern Front, the largest invasion of the war, reshaping the map. 1950, a Los Angeles firm sold a pain-free discipline brush, hairbrush body, rubber bands instead of bristles. An idea sent in by a Montana dad, it promised a softer tap for the era's household discipline, a curious attempt to tame strict norms with gadgetry. Roman baths, Bath, England, 1890 versus 2024. The Great Bath still fills from a 46-degree natural spring that drew Romans here nearly 2,000 years ago. Victorian terraces and statues frame the same pool today, preserved as a museum rather than a public bath. June 1944. U.S. Army nurses step onto a Normandy beach days after D-Day, carrying kits to set up field hospitals near the front. Among the first American women into liberated Europe, they treated thousands and earned unit citations for their service. 1960. On the Twilight Zone set, Anne Francis is fitted beside her mannequin double for Season 1, Episode 34. The After Hours. Life-cast duplicates let the camera linger without visual effects, selling the department store twist that made the episode a fan favorite. 1994 Matinee Relic. A Forrest Gump ticket stub priced at $3.25, timestamp 12:56 p.m. Early 90s multiplex paper like this was thermal printed, so surviving legible stubs are minor time capsules. 1920s London. Lamar. Reducing soap promised you could wash away fat, no diet, no exercise. Ads claimed 1 to 3 bars would slim specific body parts, a classic early miracle product pitch. 1903, the Wright Flyer stayed aloft 59 seconds. Just 66 years later, Apollo 11 touched down on the moon. Top speed leapt from 37 and to 25 as remonitors, canvas and wood, to a 363F Saturn V. November 1991, Berlin. Crews dismantle East Berlin's 19-meter granite Lenin monument, unveiled in 1970 on the then-named Leninplatz. After reunification, it was cut into 129 pieces and hauled to a Köpenick sandpit, fragments later resurfaced in exhibits and film props. 1977, Dr. Raymond Damadian's prototype MRI Indomitable performs the first human body scan on colleague Larry Minkoff. That copper cage is the RF coil, an early step that opened non-invasive 3D imaging for modern medicine. 1970, Eastern Kurdistan. Women in embroidered velvet gather for a village event. One carries a slung rifle. Mountain communities often kept arms for local protection. Kurdish women frequently led organizing, courier work, and guard duties, blending tradition with visible readiness. Misao Okawa, 1898-2015, once the world's oldest person, was born just 111 years after the U.S. Constitution of 1787. She died at 117, having spanned horse and carriage to the Internet age. April 11, 1912. Aboard RMS Titanic, an Irish vendor holds up handmade lace for travelers during the stop at Queenstown, Cove, captured by photographer Father Francis Brown. Brown disembarked that day with his negatives, preserving a rare onboard record from the liner's final voyage. 1918. Red Cross nurses don early respirators, canvas hoods with glass eyepieces, while tending patients during the influenza pandemic. With shortages everywhere, staff rigged protective gear and even moved wards outdoors, believing fresh air and spacing reduced spread. 1972, Oakland 16-year-old Tom Hanks, then a Skyline High drama kid, pauses outside with the era's shag cut. Within 22 years, he'd win back-to-back Academy Awards and become Hollywood's everyman. 1930s Mexico. A 2-level Pickwick coach was fitted with rail wheels and a pilot, turning a highway bus into a rail car for lightly used lines. Some ran as duplex sleepers with seats and berths, an inventive hybrid to keep passengers moving. C. 1920s brass home inhaler. A spirit lamp heats water and sends warm vapor through the glass mouthpiece for coughs and colds. A quick tune-up and this century-old gadget still exhales gentle steam. Early DIY respiratory tech that kept on working. C. 1920s. The solar bath helmet bathed a patient's head in artificial ultraviolet light for ear, nose, throat ailments and stubborn colds. You'd sit with your head inside a metal drum while quartz lamps simulated sunlight, a vivid relic of medicine's light therapy craze. 17th century Indian temple chariot, Ratha, a rolling shrine of carved hardwood, iron-banded wheels, and tiered pavilions for the deity's idol. During festival processions, hundreds of devotees hauled it by ropes through town, turning streets into a moving temple. 1914, Egypt. Australian Imperial Force troops trained at Mena Camp beneath the pyramids. Some units even kept kangaroo mascots brought by ship. Weeks later, many sailed to Gallipoli, carrying desert dust and those mascots into the campaign that shaped the Anzac legend. July 1961. Yuri Gagarin, fresh from Vostok 1, rolled through London in an open-top Rolls-Royce to roaring royal-sized crowds. He met Prime Minister Macmillan, toured factories, and won headlines for the Gagarin Grin, a Cold War moment of shared awe. 1974, Maun, Botswana. A kid pulls a handmade wire car with bottle cap wheels, part of a southern African tradition of crafting Galimoto toys from scrap. Built with pliers and imagination, these steerable models often had working doors and suspensions, rolling miles on sandy streets. 1999, backstage at Miss Moscow. Contestants wait with number tags, Y2K makeup, and the very 90s swimsuit over tights look. Beauty pageants surged in post-Soviet Russia, turning into TV spectacles that blended runway polish with new money glamour. 1994, Russia. Reporters hammer out copy on beige notebooks perched on the steps as Prince Charles visits. Curbside newsroom, no Wi-Fi, no power strips. Files went out via PCMCIA modems and hotel phone lines, a snapshot of early mobile journalism on the fly. 1870s Japan, a newspaper vendor poses in a hand-colored studio portrait, clutching broadsheets and a bell, his flag-topped box serving as a mobile kiosk. This was Meiji-era marketing. Ring the bell, shout the headlines, and sell fresh editions as print culture exploded. Pura Ulun Danu Bratan, Bali. Then and now, 88 years apart, the 11-tier Meru Tower still faces the lake, now ringed by gardens and shrines. Built in the 1600s, this water temple honors Dewi Danu, guardian of the island's irrigation. Its silhouette hasn't budged. Early 1900s cast iron radiator with a built-in warming cabinet. Families slid bread, plates, or leftovers onto the perforated shelves to warm using steam heat. Part heater, part kitchen hack, it also dried gloves and kept meals ready long before electric ranges and microwaves. 1843. While wagon trains rolled west on the Oregon Trail, Scottish inventor Alexander Bain patented the first facsimile telegraph. In an age of campfires and canvas, messages could already be scanned line by line and sent over wires, Victorian proto-email. 1980s, split on the Adriatic. Beachgoers sip pee-pee, a cult Dalmatian soda launched in the 70s, under that bright Mediterranean glare. Yugoslavia's Riviera mixed socialist ease with West-East cool, Visa light tourism, pop music, and sunlit concrete piers. 1949, inventor Charles L. Langs pitched a strapless, backless airlift bra, little cone caps that sat on the skin like tiny hats. Shops passed with almost no real support, the concept faded, while structured bullet bras became the decade's hit. 1920s, Prince Felix Yusupov and Portugal's ex-king Manuel II stroll arm in arm during European exile. Two young aristocrats bound by upheaval, one famed for court intrigue, the other the last monarch of his country. 1940, Bulgaria. A folk healer smudges a patient with burning herbs while assistants chant. An old village ritual meant to clear harmful influences. The axe isn't for force. It's a protective charm laid beside the body, blending pagan echoes with local healing traditions. 1963, inside Polaroid Randy. Every tiny vial marks one of 5 surplus chemical recipes tried over 15 years to perfect instant film. That relentless tinkering yielded quicker developing emulsions and the lush peel-apart prints that defined mid-century snapshots. This 1991 Radio Shack flyer sold a PC, mobile phone, camcorder, CD player, clock radio, calculator, scanner, and more. Today, one smartphone replaces them all. Everyday proof of Moore's Law. 3 decades of chip gains collapsed an entire store aisle into your pocket. Guadalajara, 7th of June 1970. After Brazil beat England 1-0 at the World Cup, Pelé and England, Captain Bobby Moore, swapped shirts and embraced. The moment became an enduring symbol of pure sportsmanship and mutual respect between 2 all-time greats. Early 1900s hand-cranked vacuum, turning the wheel-powered leather bellows inside the wooden body to create suction, no electricity required. Cleaning often took 2 people, one cranking, one handling the hose, so portable also meant a workout. November 1964. Che Guevara walks across Moscow's Red Square during his visit as Cuba's industry minister. He met Soviet leaders and toured factories and research sites, reinforcing Havana-Moscow ties at the height of the Cold War. Early Crayola, gold medal, 6-color box by Binney and Smith, likely from the 1904-1910s, named for the award the brand won at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. A complete pack like this shows the classroom starter set from Crayola's first decade, rarely found intact today. 5 millennia ago, Sumerian builders etched floor plans into wet clay like this tablet, laying out walls and doorways for a real house. Each space is labeled in cuneiform with room names and dimensions, among the earliest architectural drawings on record. Iwo Jima, February 1945, black volcanic sand and surf-trapped landing craft and tanks, turning the shoreline into a maze of stalled vehicles and gear. The 5-week campaign secured critical airfields for B-29 emergency landings, reshaping Pacific air routes despite extreme logistical challenges. Paris, 1972. Baron Guy and Marie-Hélène de Rothschild hosting the famed Surrealist Ball at Château de Ferrières, where guests navigated mirror mazes and a Dalí-inspired menu. Her stag-head mask and his towering feathered hat turned high society into living art for one unforgettable night. New York, 1930. Carl Landsteiner at the Rockefeller Institute, the physician-scientist who identified the ABO blood groups and made safe transfusion possible. That same year, he earned the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. A decade later, he co-identified the Rh factor, completing modern blood typing. Paris, 1912. Athletes compete in high diving from a temporary platform on the Seine, perfectly aligned with the Eiffel Tower. Early 20th century meets like this turned riverside festivals into open-air arenas long before modern aquatic stadiums. In 1908, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, 12 years before U.S. women gained the vote in 1920. That drought lasted until 2016, a 108-year gap that became sports' most famous timeline mismatch, finally ended in a Game 7 classic. Tokyo, 1946, engineer Masaru Ibuka and physicist Akio Morita, co-founders of Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo, the company renamed Sony in 1958. From that small lab came Japan's first magnetic tape recorder, and later the pocket transistor radios that sparked a global electronics brand. October 1943, Biferno River, southern Italy. British crewmen cool off beside their mud-caked Sherman, using the engine deck as a makeshift pier. A rare, quiet pause on a long trek, where machine and everyday life briefly share the same river. Berlin from above in 1953. Empty lots and surviving blocks trace a city mid-reconstruction after massive debris clearance. Teams of Trümmerfrauen and workers removed tens of millions of cubic meters of rubble, creating the map for rebuilding. 1960s set. Sergio Leone rides a crewman's shoulders to stabilize the shot, an improvised human dolly before the Steadicam era. With the Dollars trilogy and his extreme close-ups, plus long silences, he rewired the Western style and launched the spaghetti Western wave. Whitney Wolverine, Robert Hilberg's space-age .22 target pistol from 1956 to 57 with a lightweight aluminum frame and sweeping mid-century lines. Only about 13,000 were produced before the firm closed, leaving this Buck Rogers-style design a rare icon of 1950s industrial aesthetics. In 1940, a 19-year-old from Clapham, London, searched the rubble of damaged homes with a simple rope loop, gently pulling pets to safety. By year's end, she'd saved about 600 animals, an unsung first responder for the four-legged residents of her city. 1907, near Seattle, fishermen posed with a long carcass they claimed was Cadborosaurus, the Pacific Northwest's rumored sea serpent. Most alleged finds later proved to be decomposed sharks or other animals, yet this photo still fuels the region's enduring folklore. Belgrade, April 6, 1941, the Royal Palace's domed crown lies tilted after a massive air raid damaged the complex. The strike opened the April campaign in Yugoslavia, scarring key landmarks and marking one of the city's most destructive days of the war. March 18, 1965, aboard Voskhod 2, Alexei Leonov made history as the first person to leave a spacecraft, drifting in open space for 12 minutes 9 seconds. His suit swelled and the return took quick problem-solving, but he logged the world's first spacewalk, launching the era of EVA missions. At just 8, Rozha Maria Gojewska wore a Red Cross armband and assisted caregivers in a makeshift hospital during the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. Remembered as the youngest nurse of the uprising, she carried water, relayed messages, and became a symbol of quiet bravery amid the city's 1944 turmoil. 1950s fan photos of Marilyn Monroe, one even signed, show her rising from studio ingenue to worldwide screen icon. In that decade, she led hits like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Some Like It Hot, and fans could still meet her at premieres and sidewalks before modern red carpet security. Korea, 1951, an American unit's monkey mascot grips a practice pineapple canister while Marines look on, a bizarre camp moment caught by life. Offbeat frames like this ran beside hard news to show the surreal everyday scenes of the Korean conflict. 1933, crewmen aboard the German windjammer Magdalene Vinnen II stage a deck boxing match, simple morale-boosting entertainment on long passages. After 1945, the four-masted bark was handed to the Soviet Union and renamed Sadov, which still sails today as one of the world's largest training ships. Pocket stereoscope. Twin images merge through the lenses into one 3D scene, early virtual reality in your hands. Slide-in stereograph cards, travel sets like these Japanese street views, and the world snaps into lifelike depth. Helsingland, Sweden, c. 1870-1899. The bride wears a towering flowered headdress and brood krona, bridal crown, over a layered regional costume with lace collar and silk ribbons. Those vivid hues come from hand tinting, the era's way of adding color to monochrome portraits. 1930 publicity shot, a model dubbed Miss Lemon in a full citrus costume, one of the fruit industry's cheeky beauty pageant promos of the era. The frame date, Friday the 13th, was a press-friendly gimmick to make the photo irresistible for newspapers and postcards. Rabat, 1965, two women in white hakes with Adjar face veils stroll the Medina, handbags nodding to modern city style. a crisp snapshot of Morocco at a fashion crossroads where traditional wrap garments met post-independence urban life. Glendaloh's 12th century St. Kevin's Church, nicknamed St. Kevin's Kitchen, is a rare stone-roofed chapel with a tiny round tower belfry rising from the ridge. Dry-laid granite and steep pitches let it shed the valley's rain like slate, which is why this monastic landmark has endured for 900 years. 1953, Marilyn Monroe at Niagara Falls while filming the Technicolor thriller Niagara. Publicity images like this, red blouse against the mist, supercharged her rise that year, followed by Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Iran, 1967, a young apprentice ties minute knots on a vertical loom, building a Persian carpet line by line. Fine village pieces can exceed 200 to 400 knots per square inch and take months or years to finish, with complex patterns learned by heart. Circa 1920, a descendant poses in his forebear's samurai armor, lacquered lamellar plates, broad sewed shoulder guards, and a crested helm, turning family history into a living exhibit. By then, Japan's warrior class had been abolished for decades, so suits like this survived as treasured heirlooms in ceremonial dress. 1885, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach's Reitwagen, the first gasoline-engine motorcycle and the first practical gas-powered road vehicle. A wooden riding car with a single-cylinder engine and stabilizer wheels, it reached about 12 km/h and kicked off the motor age. Fort Riff, Kronstadt, February 1910, GM Danilov photographed a row of 10-inch coastal artillery on open mounts with service platforms. The battery guarded the Gulf of Finland approach to St. Petersburg, using narrow-gauge rails and hoists to move its heavy ammunition. Nov 7, 1994, Leonid Yakubovich spins the iconic Pole Chudes wheel on stage at Kirov's Rodina Palace of Culture. The touring show brought Russia's hit TV quiz to regional crowds, turning a living room favorite into a live spectacle. Wembley, 1938. Families at the Empire Pool practiced civil defense drills, trying on government-issued respirators ahead of looming air raid threats. The arena that later became Wembley Arena briefly doubled as a training ground, turning a leisure venue into a preparedness classroom. Abram, UK, 1968. This bride managed a home for people with disabilities and invited the residents to join her wedding portrait. A small-town ceremony became a family of choice, captured in 60s coats, pillbox hats, and proud smiles. 1945. A Red Army soldier peers from a captured German panzer nest, a portable steel pillbox craned into trenches and anchored in place. Compact and fast to deploy, the Crab sheltered a single operator behind thick armor. Note the low silhouette and twin vent stacks on top. Late 1930s at Columbia Records, 23-year-old designer Alex Steinweiss replaced plain brown sleeves with the first illustrated album cover. His marquee design for smash song hits by Rodgers and Hart kicked off modern album art, and record sales jumped. Montreal, March 15, 1964. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton wed in a quiet ceremony at the Ritz-Carlton. She wore a canary yellow chiffon dress by Irene Sharaff with a floral headpiece. It was the first of their two marriages. The Cleopatra co-stars divorced in 1974, remarried in 1975, and separated again in 1976. British Mandate Palestine, 1938. At Kibbutz Mishmar Hamek near Megiddo, farmers plow with a home-built armored tractor during a time of unrest. Steel plating over a small tracked crawler let fieldwork continue while escorts watch the perimeter, a stark blend of agriculture and protection. 1920s-30s radio pram, a wicker stroller fitted with a battery-powered valve radio so parents could hear music and news on walks. Before pocket devices and transistors, radio was so central it was built into furniture, cars, and even baby carriages. Stanschützen Hellriegel M1915, an Austro-Hungarian prototype submachine gun with a water-jacketed barrel and a large drum feeder linked by a flexible chute. Only a handful were trialed in 1915, making this rare photo a peek at a shoulder-fired design years ahead of its time. Bryansk, winter 1943. Rows of German military graves marked with iron-crossed wooden markers in a temporary cemetery. The ground later became Tuchov Square, a city park where that wartime chapter survives only in archives. Papua New Guinea, 1970. 3 generations stand together. The man in the center wears a boar tusk nose ornament, a highland sign of ceremony and status. The portrait freezes a moment just before rapid change, with traditional adornment meeting a nation that would gain independence in 1975. Moscow, 1997. Sylvester Stallone, at a gala where handlers rolled out a live bear for photo ops. He waved it off with a smile. A perfectly surreal snapshot of late 90s celebrity visits to post-Soviet Russia. Hollywood meets extravagant local hospitality. 2001 set of The Lord of the Rings. Elijah Wood, Frodo, stands beside his scale double Kieran Shah, wearing matching oversized Hobbit costumes. Jackson's team mixed scale doubles, forced perspective camera tricks, and custom props to sell the height difference without CGI in many shots. Boston, John 24, 1925. This shop handout invited people to view the solar eclipse and even tucked in red-tinted paper spectacles. A great relic of early promo marketing, but modern eclipse viewers need ISO-certified filters. These novelty lenses weren't protective. A worker cups a rain puddle, and the reflection reveals a derrick, Siberia's riches framed between calloused palms. The region's giant fields opened in the 1960s-70s and have powered a major share of Russia's energy output ever since. Soviet miners didn't just work underground. They trained together in open-air GTO-style sport days, where strength contests were a point of pride. Log lifting and throwing events like this were common in mining towns through the 1970s-80s, building team spirit and bragging rights. Museum preparators sculpt a life-size triceratops head, building clay over a steel armature before making a durable exhibition cast. These behind-the-scenes artisans turn fossil data into full crowd-stopping dinosaurs for the gallery floor. Top. Modern ironworkers recreate the famous beam sit high above the city, boxed lunches and all. Bottom. The 1932 original, lunch atop a skyscraper, shot during Rockefeller Center's construction, a photo that became the icon of urban building crews. Chicago, 1885. William LeBaron. Jenny's Home Insurance Building introduced the steel skeleton frame. 10 stories, later 12, rising 138 feet yet weighing about half a masonry equivalent. This breakthrough, light frame, plus fireproof cladding, plus elevators, became the template for every modern skyscraper. December 21, 1913, editor Arthur Wynne printed his diamond-shaped word cross in the New York World, launching the modern crossword. The holiday novelty exploded into a newspaper craze within months, evolving into daily grids, clever clues, and a global pastime. Natural grass finals before widespread 1990s drainage and modern turf often ended like this, with players unrecognizable under mud. World rugby laws keep games running in heavy rain, stopping mainly for lightning or unsafe surfaces, so handling errors soar and scoring rates typically drop in these conditions. Those hundreds of glowing eyes are spotlights reflecting off the audience's binocular lenses, a common sight at 1970s arena shows. Elvis, in his white jumpsuit era, could turn a stadium into a sparkling constellation before the age of phone flashlights. Novaya Zemlya, 1970s. An Arctic weather station worker hand feeds 2 orphaned polar bear cubs that started showing up at the doorstep. It captures a bygone field routine. Today, such wildlife care is strictly regulated, with rehabilitation teams minimizing human imprinting before any release. Roman gladiator greaves, ochriae, bronze shin guards that wrap the calf to shield the front of the leg. Class is varied. Most fighters wore a single tall left leg greave behind the big shield, while types like the provocateur used a pair, with elite pieces bearing mythic reliefs like these. Antarctica, 1966, a Moscow correspondent playfully offers a microphone to an emperor penguin chick beside a portable reel-to-reel recorder. Emperor chicks learn their parents' unique calls early. In crowded colonies, they locate family by sound, making this icy interview oddly fitting. Heimae, January 1973, during the Eldfell eruption, firefighters and fishing boats blasted the lava with seawater to cool, slow, and steer it away from the harbor. Over months, they pumped billions of liters, hardening a new breakwater and saving the island's lifeline port. Black Sea mussels, Mytilus galloprovincialis, hauled in from Soviet mariculture rafts near Sudak, Crimea, 1986. Cold, plankton-rich waters let farms land ton-scale harvests like this for canneries and local markets. 1950s Italian studios often hired look-alike doubles for close-ups and demanding setups when stars' schedules were packed. One notable example is Scylla Gable, frequently compared to Sophia Loren, who soon moved from doubling to leading roles across Europe in the early 60s. Mid-century flights often included complimentary cigarette packs. This Philip Morris X Braniff Airways box was a passenger giveaway when onboard smoking was permitted. Co-branding turned the cabin into ad space, promoting Braniff's 140-plus offices across the U.S. and South America. Mylène de Mongeau, between takes on the Giant of Marathon, 1959, an Italian-French epic co-directed by Jacques Tourneur and shot around Rome with ambitious underwater battle scenes. Riding the peplum boom alongside co-star Steve Reeves, the film drew millions across Europe and boosted Demange's international profile. A 1930s physician's house call kit with glass vials of staple remedies, aspirin, quinine, digitalis, iodine, organized for quick dosing. Sets like this came just before the 1938 U.S. Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, so labeling and potency often differed by maker, prompting doctors to carry their own curated stock. Foreign diplomats and their spouses inspect the Romanov jewels at Gakran, Moscow, 1923, evaluating the nationalized treasures item by item. Their reports guided potential purchases by foreign governments as the young Soviet state sought hard currency. Saigon, 1961. Rickshaws roll beside a family on a Lambretta-style scooter while a Renault 4CV taxi cruises past. The street reads like a timeline, pedal power next to new engines, showing Vietnam's fast jump into modern city life. Marianne Bevan, 1874-1933, a London nurse and mother of 4, developed acromegaly in her 30s, which dramatically altered her features. After her husband died, she supported her family by working in sideshows, marketed under a cruel stage title, and became a noted Coney Island performer in the 1920s. Angus Barbieri of Dundee completed a medically supervised fast for 382 days in 1965-66, taking only water, tea, coffee, and vitamin supplements, and went from 207 kilo to 82 kilo, a loss of 125 kilo. The case was published in the Postgraduate Medical Journal, making his fast a record and a fixture in medical oddities. Tehran, January 16, 1979. Senior officers at Mehrabad Airport kneel before Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and Empress Farah as he prepares to depart Iran amid nationwide unrest. His exit ended 37 years of rule and cleared the way for Ayatollah Khomeini's return weeks later. Women wrestlers in the 1890s show catch-as-catch-can holds, part sport, part stagecraft for studio postcards and touring exhibitions. Billed in music halls and circuses, these athletes pushed strength culture for women long before official championships existed. New York, 1944. Bridget Hitler sees off her son William Patrick as he enlists in the U.S. Navy. Liverpool-born William publicly condemned his uncle Adolf in U.S. media, and after the war, he settled on Long Island under the surname Stuart Houston. Voronezh Electro-Signal Plant, 1959. Workers hand solder chassis for black and white vacuum tube TVs on jigged conveyor stands. The red pennant marks a Brigade of Communist Labor, an output and quality award used to drive shop floor competition as the USSR pushed to put a set in every home. Rudolph Valentino poses with winners of the Mineralava Beauty Clay Contest during his 1923 dance tour stop in San Francisco. The silent-era idol used the nationwide pageant to promote his films in the cosmetics brand. Finalists earned cash, a Hollywood screen test, and a chance to tour with him. Late 1970s appliance furniture, fad. A plaid sofa with a built-in AM/FM tuner and single speaker under a lift-up armrest. Marketed as space-saving hi-fi before boomboxes and remotes, it plugged into the wall so you could change stations without getting up. Mildenhall, Suffolk, 1942. An RAF short Stirling, the service's first 4-engine heavy, stands ready with its nose turret and bomb aimer glazing prominent. A mandated wingspan cap gave it a stubby wing and Larka 16500 FAU ceiling, so the type moved from night missions to mine-laying, supply drops, and glider tug work. Typhoon class, Project 941, submarine surfaces through about 2.5 meters of Arctic pack ice, a benchmark record for under-ice operations. Reinforced sail, flooded ballast, and careful upward thrust let crews open a narrow runway in the ice and step out safely. Moscow, 1947. A curbside gasoline pillar with a swing-arm hose fuels a new Gaz M20 Pobeda. Early post-war Soviet stations often used street posts with manual meters, no canopy, one pump, and an attendant handling the fill. Late Victorian dressing room, c. 1890s. A helper braces her foot to pull the back laces of a whalebone-stiffened corset for even tension. Worn over a chemise to protect the fabric, these stays shape the hourglass figure prized in late Victorian and early Edwardian fashion. Upscale department store, 1955. A model demonstrates a foundation set, structured bra, high-waist girdle with garters, and fishnet hosiery, while salesmen note fit details. New nylon and elastic weaves made shapewear lighter and more precise, fueling the rise of in-store fitting services. Rijksmuseum treasure. Petronella Dunois' late 17th century dollhouse, a cabinet of rooms furnished with real silver, fine textiles, and tiny Dutch and Asian ceramics. These showpiece houses weren't toys. Their cost could rival a full canal home, serving as a status gallery of perfect miniatures. London, 1912. Suffragette. Sylvia Pankhurst hand-letters "Votes for Women" on the Women's Social and Political Union office near Bow Road. Bold street messaging like this kept the campaign visible despite frequent arrests and media pressure. Soviet soldiers escort a wounded German NCO near Vitovka, September 8, 1941. On muddy village roads, brief pauses like this, moving prisoners and the injured, often cut through the chaos of the front. Berlin, Sept. 1, 1914. A crowd packs the street as an officer reads Kaiser Wilhelm II's mobilization order. Within days, reservists reported to mustering stations and the city shifted onto a full wartime footing. USSR, 1930s. A radio hobby circle crowds around a home-built vacuum tube set, sharing a single pair of headphones while tuning shortwave. State-backed radiofication clubs taught soldering, Morse, and circuit basics, training the technicians who later powered Soviet broadcasting and industry. Iran, 1977. A Tehran salon where stylists and clients work in Western-style dress, typical of the Shah-era urban lifestyle. 2 years later, the 1979 revolution reshaped public dress codes. Headscarves became compulsory in workplaces like this. 1993, on the set of The Mask, Jim Carrey in green foam latex makeup poses with a stand-in between takes. Filmed in '93 and released in 1994, it fused elastic prosthetics with early ILM CGI and rocketed Carey to box office stardom. Stockholm, 1912. Pistol shooters fire one-handed in the classic dueling stance at paper bullseyes from set distances. Early Olympic shooting mixed military and civilian clubs across multiple pistol and rifle events, shaping standards that became today's ISSF rules. Early Disneyland walk-around Mickey, late 1950s, wore a rigid papier-mâché or fiberglass head with a fixed stare. Many kids kept their distance. Feedback pushed Disney to redesign the characters in the 1960s-70s with softer shapes and better performer visibility. 1940s swim dress one-piece, polka-dot skirted overlay, built-in bra, and stretchy lastex shaping for coverage plus movement. Wartime style rules, USL 85, cut excess fabric but popularized practical dress-like suits that went from sand to boardwalk. Disneyland Submarine Voyage Lagoon, early 1960s. Park mermaids waved to passing boats like the Ethan Allen as guests sailed through the underwater scenes. The live performer feature lasted only a few seasons due to safety and comfort issues such as heat, sun exposure, and exhaust. Alaska, 1984. A competitor at the World Eskimo Indian Olympics performs the ear weight lift, suspending stacked plates from a cord looped over the ear. Rooted in Inuit endurance games, the event tests focus and discomfort tolerance with results judged by total weight or distance carried. Moscow, 1994. A street ice cream vendor dressed as Dead Moroz works a Ramsay freezer cart in the snow. Handwritten tags in the thousands of rubles, 150 for a scoop, 430 for winter Eskimo, 3,400 for an ice cream cake, capture the post-Soviet price surge. Thomas Edison at West Orange, 1911, examining an early incandescent bulb. Over 30 years after his 1879 breakthrough, his team's power and wiring system had turned electric light into everyday infrastructure. Write your opinion about this video in the comments. I read everything and it's important to me. And also subscribe to this channel and the second channel. I left the link in the description.